Picture this. You're baking something on a weekend afternoon, and the recipe calls for condensed milk. You pull a can from the cabinet, maybe it's been sitting there for over a year. Crack it open, and it's perfectly fine. Thick, golden, smells sweet, no spoilage, no refrigeration. How does that work exactly? That's what we're going to find out, right here on Simple Why. So at its core, condensed milk is exactly what it sounds like. Milk that has had most of its water removed. Fresh cow's milk is roughly 87% water. Strip most of that out, add a significant amount of sugar, and you end up with something thick, shelf-stable, and intensely sweet. The version most people know, the one in the can, is technically called sweetened condensed milk. That distinction matters because there's also an unsweetened version called evaporated milk. They go through a similar process, but the sugar is what separates them, in flavor, in texture, and in how long each one lasts. When we looked into where this actually started, the answer was earlier and more specific than expected. The credit goes to a Connecticut-born inventor named Gale Borden Jr., who received a U.S. patent for his condensed milk process on August 19, 1856. Borden didn't come up with the idea in a lab. He came up with it on a ship. He'd watched children on a transatlantic voyage get sick from bad milk, and he spent years afterward trying to solve that problem. That detail alone kind of reframes the whole thing. To understand why Borden's invention mattered, you have to picture what fresh milk looked like in the 1850s. Before refrigeration existed at any practical scale, milk spoiled within hours in warm weather. Transporting it by rail or wagon over any real distance was nearly impossible. Cities were growing fast, and their residents had almost no reliable access to safe dairy. People were getting sick, children especially. Contaminated milk was one of the leading causes of infant mortality in American cities during the mid-1800s. That wasn't a small problem. It was a public health crisis. Borden's solution wasn't immediately adopted. His first condensary opened in Wolcott, Connecticut in 1856, and early sales were slow. That changed fast when the Civil War broke out in 1861. The Union Army needed food that could travel without spoiling. Condensed milk became part of soldier rations almost overnight. The actual process of making condensed milk is more precise than you might expect. It starts with standardization, meaning the fat content of the incoming milk gets adjusted to hit a consistent level. Every can needs to taste the same, so that step locks in the baseline. From there, the milk is gently heated to kill bacteria. Then it moves into what's called a vacuum evaporator, a sealed chamber where air pressure is lowered significantly. Lower pressure means water boils at a lower temperature, around 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 degrees Celsius, instead of the usual 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. That matters because high heat would scorch the milk and alter the flavor. The vacuum lets the water escape without cooking the milk. Once enough water has evaporated, typically reducing the volume by more than half, sugar is mixed in. The sugar does two things at once. It sweetens the product, obviously, but it also raises the concentration of dissolved solids high enough that bacteria can't easily survive. That's the actual preservation mechanism. It's not magic. It's basic food chemistry. After that, the mixture cools, gets poured into sterilized cans, sealed, and given a final heat treatment to eliminate any remaining risk. The result is a shelf life of 2 or more years, unopened. The thing that sets condensed milk apart from other sweeteners or dairy products is what happens when you combine all those concentrated elements together. The proteins, fats, and natural milk sugars all become denser when the water leaves. Add cane sugar on top of that. and the resulting texture is unlike anything else in your pantry. And honestly, the flavor is its own thing. It's not just sweet milk. The slight caramelization that happens during processing gives it a depth that's distinct from sugar alone. That's why Vietnamese iced coffee, Brazilian brigadeiro, and Filipino leche flan all rely on it. Not because it's convenient, but because nothing else quite replicates what it does. In the US, condensed milk shows up most often in holiday baking. Fudge at Christmas, key lime pie in summer, 7-layer bars year-round. Globally, the reach is wider. In Vietnam, the iced coffee that's now popular in Vietnamese restaurants across the US, because fresh dairy wasn't widely available when coffee culture took hold there. In the UK, a product called carnation condensed milk became a staple of no-bake desserts, starting in the early 20th century. The unexpected use? Some endurance athletes use it as a portable, high-calorie fuel during ultra-distance events. Compact, energy-dense, no refrigeration needed. Borden would probably appreciate that. The biggest limitation of condensed milk is the one built into its design: the sugar. A single 2-tablespoon serving carries around 22 grams of sugar, which makes it a poor fit for anyone managing blood sugar or cutting calories. Manufacturers have released low-sugar and fat-free versions over the years, but the texture is never quite the same. The fat and the sugar are part of what makes the original work. On the production side, some dairy companies are exploring plant-based versions using coconut or oat milk. This is still early stage, but the demand is real. Whether those versions can replicate the texture and depth of the original is still an open question. So the next time you pop open a can of condensed milk, there's more going on than you'd think. What started as one man's attempt to solve a 19th century public health crisis became a pantry staple used in dozens of countries and hundreds of recipes. All because of a vacuum chamber, a lot of sugar, and a pretty clever understanding of how bacteria work. What part surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. We read everyone. If you've got a topic you want us to look into next, let us know. And if we pick yours, we'll give you a shout out. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching Simple Why.